Welcome back to Land to House. Over the past 8 months or so, I've been using this makeshift workbench as my main work area, and it's time to fix that. I want to have 2 different workbenches here in my shop. One's going to be built into the wall, and one's going to be a mobile unit. And so today, I'd like to tackle the wall-mounted workbench. Now this is going to be loosely based off of the wranglerstar series from some time ago, and hopefully it will be just as nice and functioning well. So let's get started. All of these 2x6 have a bevel on the edge called a bullnose. I'm going to use the table saw to rip that piece off of all of my top boards. I'm going to be using this wall for this built-in workbench, and it's going to be 8 foot long. So the, I guess, ledger board is what it's called, is going to be here on the wall. And I do want to make this a little bit more decorative than just a board. So I'm going to cut a corner off real quick. wranglerstar's series was somewhere around 5 or 6 videos long, and I'm going to try and do this in one. So I've got my speed square here. I'm going to come down to the 2-inch mark, and then I'm going to come back with my speed square here, pivot at that point until I see, let's go with the 5, I believe. So I'm just going to cut that corner off to make this a bit more decorative. Now I want my workbench to be at 36 inches, and with all the boards that are going to be on top of this ledger board, I need this to be at 31.5 inches tall from the floor here. So I'm just going to mark 31.5. There are some things that I do that would be a lot easier with a second set of hands, but we're just going to make it do as we can. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is just get this up here. I have several of these 4-inch anchor bolts, and I'm going to be using these to anchor into my studs. I've got a 3/16 drill bit, and I'm just matching this up here. Drilling a hole, and then getting these sunk into place. I picked up one of these drill bit to socket adapters, and that is really handy to have here. Whenever it gets close to the end, I finish it with the socket set. There we go. And that should really lock this thing in well. Now the bottom ledger board is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to measure up 1.5 inches from the end and flip over and also measure 1.5 inches up. And then I'm going to be able to take my speed square and just hold on that mark, and I'm going to move down to the number 2 here, and I'm just going to be able to run a line, and I'm just going to cut off that corner and also this corner. So basically it's going to just make a little bit more decorative end to this. There we go. I'm going to cut those 2 triangles off. Now I need 3 boards that are 17.5 inches and 3 boards that are 19 inches. This is going to be the horizontal support for the bench. Now that I have the top ledger well anchored into the wall, it's time to get the 2x4 sections on top of here that will help to secure the surface of the bench. So what I'm going to do is measure out and cut a couple of blocks for the sides, skip room for the 2x6, and then have a long piece, and then I'm going to have 3 support beams. So I'm going to have one here in the middle, and then on the end as well. I'm going to want the first 2x6 to be anchored down on either side of this bolt here. And so right here is where I want this to be. So let's see how long this piece needs to be here. 10 inches right there. So let me cut a 10-inch 2x4. I'm going to attach this with some 3-inch screws, but to make sure they don't have any splitting, I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick pre-drill. That way I don't have to worry about this 2x4 cracking. I'm going to make sure that screw sinks down just enough that it's not going to interfere with the top of my bench here. Now I feel like 2 supports would probably be enough for this bench, but I'm going to go ahead and find the 4-foot mark, which is the center. And that's where my next support is going to go. It's a little off from where my stud is, but that's okay. At least it's supported well. So I'm going to go ahead and put my piece here and find out what my distance is. 30 1/4 ought to do it, giving myself a little extra room for air. The 3 shorter 2x6s are going to have a decorative notch cut out of the side. And to do that consistently, I have set up a stop on my miter saw. Now this could also be done on a table saw, but I'm just going to cut out from about midway on this 2x6 here. Now it's time to get these 2 support pieces put together. I'm going to lay the newly angled piece on the ground here, and then I need to put some wood glue on this. Yeah. Okay, that should be good enough. And now I'm going to place this on here with the nicest edge. I'm going to try and match up the front side here, because the back side is just going to be hidden and under the tabletop. Okay, I'm going to be using some 2.5-inch screws from the top to hold this together. Now I do want to make sure that I have this thing totally squared up before I get this locked into place here. I think I might use a couple of clamps real quick so it doesn't go moving around. Now that this piece has been completed, I'm going to get it placed here on the ledger board, and I'm going to be using the drill to pre-drill into the ledger again. Now keep in mind there's nothing under this to support it, so it's not very strong as far as putting something on it, so just keep that in mind. Okay, that step is looking nice. So when the tabletop is placed on here, it's going to be supported by this piece, which will have a triangular piece that goes down to the second ledger board. And then the tabletop will also be screwed into this. So it's going to be supported across this gap here and out here with these. So it should be quite strong whenever it's all put together. Now the bottom ledger board is going to be down here, and there's going to be support pieces that go from that ledger board to the underside of these supports. And this is what I have come up with right here. Now when WranglersStar made this, I think this was the piece that gave him the most trouble, and I would have to agree. It's definitely some odd cuts here to get this going. But so what I've got is, if this was going to represent the bottom plate, and this would fit on here, and then there's going to be 2 of these sandwiched together, and then they go up under here. like that. So to make this piece, what I first did was just cut off some of the back of this board because it looked like this. And so I just shaved off some, and that gave me enough room to get the board up close to the wall. And then I was able to use another board to draw out that cut and then match up this top piece. And so it looked like that. I held it up and just drew a line on the back of the board and was able to get this angle that's based on this cut here. So, and now once I have this one, I'm able to use it as a template and make the others. Okay, I have this template piece, which is my first piece. I'm going to set it down on my 2x6, and to keep this from moving around while I'm making my lines, I'm just going to use a clamp. That should do it. And now I'm just tracing over the lines from my previous board here. Okay, that should do it. There we go. That's the piece I need to cut out. These two turned out pretty good, I think. So now I'm going to be putting them together with some Tight Bond wood glue. Now previously I used screws on the base of those supports, but this time I'm just going to be using the glue. So I'm going to try and give a good healthy amount here. And I think what I'm going to do is spread this around just a bit. Alright, I'm just going to be using some of my clamps to get these to stay together here. I've given the 3 support pieces about an hour and a half for that glue to dry a bit. And so it's time to get these into position here. Now I'm going to go ahead and attach them to the ledger first and then put the ledger into place, and it will find its position here. So let's go ahead and get these attached to the ledger board. Now my top ledger and bottom ledger are 8 feet, so they're equal. So what I can do is run my tape measure and find the middle of each support and then transfer that over to my bottom ledger. So this one is 11 inches here on center. So I'm going to transfer that. My bottom ledger is turned so that the face that's going to be facing out is down, because I'm going to be screwing in from the back here. So I need to mark this board at 11 inches. To indicate the center point of where that support is going to go here. Okay, I'm going to set my support here on my bottom ledger and line up that center point. And then I'm going to be using 4 3-inch screws here from the back side. And hopefully that will really lock this thing down well. Okay, now that I have all 3 of these on the bottom ledger, I have held it up into position and marked where a couple of screw holes are going to be. And just to keep this in place, I'm going to put a couple of these 3-inch screws. 2 of them ought to do it just to hold it into place. This thing is just a little bit awkward to move around alone, but should be able to manage here. Okay, I'm just going to match this up with the top and hopefully be able to hold this here with one hand and get this screw in here. Okay, as you can see, I've got it into position there on all of the spots. So now it's time to both anchor in the bottom ledger and also put the screws in here from the top of each of these. Well, I found my first big flaw with my design. I should not have put my support pieces in front of the first bolt, because I can't put more bolts into the lower ledger at that spot. But I'm just putting 2 bolts, anchor bolts at every other spot, and hopefully it'll just be enough there on the end. Now that the bottom ledger is on, it's time to get the top support attached to the bottom support here. Now, because this is 3 inches, I've got these 4.5 inch screws, anchor bolts. They're going to go through here. And also, I'm a little short on these, but I'm going to remove one of these 3 inch screws and put another 4 inch here to really lock these down. And I'm going to do that to each of these. Now, because the tabletop is going to be on this, I need to sink these down just a bit. I've got a Forstner bit that I'm just going to recess here. Now, I'm also going to pre-drill using this same bit that was used for the ledger board here. This is really turning out well. So it seems to be pretty strong. The 2 sides have a little bit of flex. You may not even be able to see that. But the middle one, I'm seeing no flex at all. So that's really good. And I think once the top is put on here and it's all pulled in together, it's going to be nice and strong. So I still have several of these larger 4.5 inch bolts. And that is going to be to attach the top to this. So when that's put on, just some regular 3 inch screws will go in up from the 2x4. And then those 4.5 inch bolts will go up through the base of this. So now it's time to move on to that chopping block top. Now it's time to get the workbench top done. So to start this process, I'm going to lay the top of the workbench facing down. And so my nicer, prettier boards like this one are going to be facing down here. And to begin, I'm going to take this 2x6 that has been ripped in half. And that's going to go on this first edge. Now I only have about 2.5 of these wood glue bottles, so I'm going to just try and get the edge done, and hopefully it will lock it into place well enough. So to begin, I'm going to go ahead and get my wood glue put out here on the first edge of this board. I've seen those roller applicators that make a nice even spread, but I don't have one of those. Now that the glue has been applied, I'm going to just set this board here on the edge. And I'm going to do a couple of things. I've got my wood clamps lined up here. I'm going to try and match this up. And now I've also got a box of 2.5 inch screws that I'm going to be using to lock this into place really well. And because this is the bottom, we won't be seeing these screws later on. So that takes care of the first board. I have the next pretty looking board, and I'm going to set that down next to this. But first, I need to go ahead and put a single bead of this glue on the edge of this board. Do that right in the middle. Hi. Okay, I'm going to turn this facing down and then plop it into position. Okay, now I'm going to have to use clamps on here, and so I've got some longer clamps that should reach both sides of this. And the reason that I have my boards up a little bit off the table is so I can reach up under here and use my clamps right here in the middle. I have several clamps because I want to be able to get this in here without causing any gaps in my tabletop. Okay, now that I have these two together, it's time to put the next of the lower boards on. I have one here that's not very attractive. This is a bigger board, but I'm going to do glue on both sides once again. Now after this step here, it's just a rinse and repeat kind of deal. And before I plop this one in here, I'm going to go ahead and get the edge of this one glued as well. Every edge needs to have glue on it. Okay, I'm going to turn this into position and plop it in there. Now this one also is going to get clamped tight together and then also put screws in here. Well, that's a fun mess of clamps and glue and stuff, but that's what it takes to get this thing nice and secure. So I'm gonna let that sit overnight because it's night and I'm out of time, and then when I come back tomorrow I'll get the other half done and we'll get this thing installed. It's looking nice. Definitely gonna be happy to have a stationary workbench. Check that out. The workbench top is now complete. I'm going to flip this over and expose the top side, which is facing down right now, and then use some 80 grit sandpaper on my orbital sander to get this thing nice and smooth, and then it will be time to get it mounted up onto the base here. So whenever I was watching Wranglerstar's video on making his 10-foot workbench, he was having a hard time moving this thing around, and I was like, it couldn't be that heavy. This thing is heavy. Gosh. I may have to just, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm thinking about maybe taking the off-feed table from my table saw and just kind of sliding this thing over to the base. But anyway, keep that in mind if you're going to make one of these, that it really is heavy. All right. I'll take that sander now and get this thing sanded down. Well, I believe it's time to get the tabletop over to the mounting brackets. It's going to be heavy, but I think what I'm going to do is just try to span the distance between my current table here and over here. Cool, and we're done. Alright, so I'm going to get this over there. Threw out my back 2 weeks ago. I'm still just recovering, so let's see how this goes. Okay. I think we'll try and get that in over here real quick. Okay, now if I can just walk this over there, we should be good to go. How nice is that? Of course, I still have to get the hardware from the underside, but that is so nice. Even better than I was expecting when I started this project. Now it's time to get the top attached to the base here. So I'm just going to be using a drill bit to get a hole in the base. Then I'm going to swap this bit out for my socket set. And I'm using that 4.5 inch bolt here. Now it's lifting up a little bit. I'm going to back it out and then hold this down and it should pull it down. Alright. Now I can come back with the socket set and really get it in there. It does help to go the right way. And now to wrap up this build, I'm just using some 3-inch screws on the very back board here. And this concludes the wall-mounted workbench build. I am so pleased with this thing. It's even better than I was anticipating whenever I started the project. Seems to be quite strong. Now there is one mistake that I made, and that was putting the edge pieces over the stud. I should have moved those probably in a little bit so that I could access one more stud on the bottom. Now I'm going to put a vise on this side, and so I've actually put a bolt right there, and that's going to just help things be a little bit stronger. But I'm able to sit on this thing and it doesn't even seem to creak or move, so definitely happy with it. Now I'm going to come back and do some more sanding on the edge, but as far as this video goes, I think that is a wrap. Man, this bench is solid. Yeah. As you can see, I can sit here and there is no movement whatsoever. I hope you've enjoyed watching this workbench build video. If you have, hit that thumbs up button. And if you know somebody that would benefit from a built-in workbench, please share this video with them. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, however you want to get content out there. It helps the channel out a lot. Also, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I think this is video like 760 on the channel, so definitely a lot of content to enjoy. Write a comment down below if you have some great thoughts about this build. Coming up pretty soon, I'm going to be installing a woodworking vise on this other side over here, so should be a fun video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.